everyone. This is Pastor Julian Danner. I just wanted to jump on here and share with you about prayer and worship. It's a tremendous topic that we need to cover quite frequently, I believe. Prayer is one of the biggest things that I study. I study prayer a lot. I read a lot of books on prayer. There's a lot of great writers out there about prayer. It's also one of the hardest things, or one of the more difficult things that Christians struggle with, is maintaining a adequate prayer life. And in doing so, they end up hindering themselves by not having a great prayer life. The first topic here is the theology of prayer. We're going to talk about adoration, petition, intercession, perseverance, and listening. Jesus taught us how to pray when the disciples said, "Teach us how to pray," and he begins with, "Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." The prayer itself begins off with adoration. It talks about God, how holy he is, his position in relationship to us, and it talks about how great God is. We fail a lot of times in our prayers to discuss the greatness of God. Moving on into petition, you're bringing your needs before the Lord. Give us this day our daily bread. Intercession, praying for the needs of others. Perseverance, remember the lady who would come before for the king, and he wouldn't give her petition, but she kept coming anyways, and he said, "How much greater would the Father give unto us?" That's perseverance. And then listening, spending time just hearing God speak to you in your heart. These are the 5 areas of theology of prayer we need to make sure we cover in our prayers. This is the pattern, if you will, of prayer. If we cover these areas, we're praying more effectively. I wouldn't say fully effectively, because we can still concentrate ourselves. We spend too much time on intercession and petition, not enough time on adoration and listening. Moving on to the next area of prayer we'll talk about is prayer-driven leadership. It is well known that readers are leaders, or leaders are readers, but I like to say leaders also pray, because prayer begins with leadership. If you're a leader today, you need to be praying. And I would say everyone's a leader. You're leading somebody in some direction, whether you know it or not. We ought to have prayer as our number one priority. Next up is theology of worship. This is a very controversial area I see in our culture today, because the styles of worship have really broadened and changed in the last 10 to 15 years. What is worship? Worship is essentially having communion with the Lord continuously, praising him, lifting his name up. Also, worship is done corporately in the body as a whole, in a congregation. This is probably what we tend to think when we think worship, but worship is elevating God in his rightful position as Lord over our life. Living for him is worship. Speaking about him is worship. Calling out his name and praising him is worship. Part of prayer is worship. Worship is prayer. Those go hand in hand. But we spend a lot of time on corporate worship and not necessarily on independent worship. We ought to be worshiping the Lord from the time we wake up till the time we go to bed. If you look at even nature itself shows us that it is pointing itself towards God. It's worshiping the Lord. Psalms 150 tells us that everything that has breath, let it praise the name of God. So we ought to be praising the Lord. That's worship, lifting his name up on high. Guys, that is the summation of that class I'd like to teach you, is that first of all, we must dedicate our hearts and have a dedicated prayer life. Second, if we're leaders and everyone's a leader, we should be praying. Third, prayer is part of worship, but worship itself is independent of prayer, and we need to have an active worship life, bringing praises unto the Lord. I hope you got something out of this. I hope this really helped you.